G'day viewer, Big Kev here, on the Triumph. Just got back from Tasmania and I just put up a video to show my adventures around there with the car. I'd love to do it on the bike. The amount of bikes I got on the ferry that went over there was fantastic. So I apologise straight up, it's a long video and I understand if you don't watch it and you find it boring, but the place is amazing. I just had to show some of it, not cover so much out. It's all I could fit on. But anyway, here's the video. We just arrived in Devonport. We've arrived at Cataract Gorge in Launceston, and to greet us we have a little friend. This is Cataract Gorge, about 3 kilometres outside of the city of Launceston. What a magnificent place. We left Cataract Gorge and then this is the view from our motel room at Swansea where we stayed the night. And on our way to Hobart we came across this bridge which is was built by the convicts in the 1840s. It's those spiky shards they put on there was to stop the cattle from falling off the bridge when they transported them, or moving them along the road. Hobart was absolutely fantastic. It's a great place to visit, easy to get around, terrible parking, especially when the Salamanca markets are on. The Salamanca markets are slightly overpriced. They're about 1 kilometre long and it's just packed on a Saturday morning. It's the place to be. And I've got a picture here of a great apron, and the wife said she wouldn't wear it for some reason. And this dude there had a tennis racket around his gut. He was standing and going through a tennis racket. Crazy. But it was a great day there at the markets itself.
Really funny if you drop the 80s. Okay. Now I need you to remove the belt for this next part. Wow. I also need to remove the pants. My opinion seems pretty divided on that subject. I'll let the noise have it, okay. I just want to apologise to you lot for the view you're about to receive. Sorry about this. Genuinely sorry. Wow. I know you guys feel like you got a rough drop there. Seriously, anything they feel. Much worse from back there, isn't it? Okay. This guy's looking really interesting because he's a doctor. And this is the worst case of hemorrhoids he's ever seen.
In the afternoon at Hobart we left there for a drive and we come across a shot tower, but also there was this little sign. Anyone in Australia that knows what Keen's curry powder is, well, this is the place, and the local postmaster actually invented it there. And this shot tower was rather good. There's a beautiful area there. Great find, just going for a drive. This is a shot tower just outside of Hobart. They said you can climb the top of the stairs for a magnificent view. I'm not that fit. Awesome. After leaving the shot tower, we made our way up to Mount Wellington, which is above Hobart. The temperature dropped something like about 15 degrees and the wind was howling. But the view from up there is well worth it. Sorry about the wind noise, but it was just magnificent up there. We spent 2 days in Hobart, which was really great. There's so much to see there, and made our way to Port Arthur, where the convict settlement was. And on our way there, we had one of the locals, so I had to stop in the middle of in the road to let the local pass, and they kidnapped. Only in Tasmania, but we did see a lot of wildlife there: echidnas and potoroos and wallabies. But this is fascinating. This dude. Port Arthur is a must-see if you're in Tasmania. It's just a well-kept and fantastically historic place, and you really get an insight into the life of the convicts that were there and how hard they really had it. This is the penitentiary. A guard house up there, and the commandant's hut. Here's an old church at Port Arthur. There you go, Suffolk Andy. (1836). Not old by British standards. Well, touring Port Arthur, you definitely would need more than 1 day. We also went over to the Isle of the Dead. You get a ferry across there, it costs you an extra $20. You get a guided tour of the isle. Now on that island there's 1,100 people buried there, and the island's only about 200 metres square. The guided tour is fascinating, great bit of history there, well worth the inclusion if you go there. The next day after Hobart, we were travelling to a town called Richmond. On our way, we decided to investigate a lookout and a site called the Devil's Kitchen. It's just what the ocean has done to the rock and how it's caved in and made a gorge inside the rock. Fascinating. Glad we took the detour to have a quick look at it. Beautiful scenery from the lookout as well. The town of Richmond itself has Australia's oldest bridge, 1824, still in use, built by the convicts. And also in the town of Richmond is a miniature Hobart, as it was in the 1840s, I think it was. These two blokes have built it over the last few years, fired everything themselves from the clay models they made. Yeah, fascinating place. After leaving Richmond, we headed to the west coast town of Strahan, and we stopped off at a place called Nelson's Falls. Unintentional, it was just a rest stop, and decided that we'd do the rainforest walk to the falls to see if they were any good. Oh, what a surprise this was. Have a look at this. This is Nelson's Falls. Awesome. Beautiful rainforest. Strahan is a great place, especially if you do the World Heritage cruise up the Gordon River. It takes you out to Hell's Gate, you see some salmon farming, you do a tour of, you get off and do a tour around Sara Island, and that Sara Island was hell on earth. Port Arthur was built because of the failure of Sara Island. That was the very first penal colony in Tasmania. And then you go for a cruise up the Gordon River to the wilderness, World Heritage Wilderness area, and you get off on the walkway there and see the rainforest and some huon pine. Fascinating. It's the best day I had in Tasmania was on this boat and the tour that it gave. Started off, we went out to Hell's Gate.
He got off I ran under that rock wall up ahead and on the sandbags to the right. We don't see any shipwrecks there.
On the boat ride, we stopped at Sara Island. That was the first convict settlement, and it was a brutal place. Something like 8,000 lashes were dished out in the first year amongst the convicts. 8,000. And they had not a cat o' nine tail, they had what they called a Macquarie whip, which was 2 cat o' nine tails tied together, and the ends had lead shot tied into them, so they were guaranteed to cut open your flesh on the first hit. Yeah, it was brutal. It was Sara Island itself ended up being a great boat building place because of the discovery of Huon pine. And the last boat they built, the Frederick, 10 convicts were told to finish it off. They finished it off and then stole it, and they sailed away to Chile. Ended up in Chile in South America there. But they were found by the British, and 4 of them were brought back a year later to Hobart to stand trial. Great place, great bit of history about Sara Island, very brutal. Great tour they give you around the island itself. Further up, we went up the Gordon River to Heritage Landing. It's a boardwalk they put in through the forest. And the forest that you see in there, it's just amazing. You know, there's ferns, and there's fungus growing off trees. There's ferns that just grow hanging off the trees themselves. I think they call them air ferns or something. There's no root system to it. They just hang off the trees and survive. Awesome place. We got back and back to Strawn later in the afternoon. They give you dinner on the boat. And we pulled up to a working Huon pine sawmill. And I did buy a little bit of Huon pine, very expensive. It only grows 1 millimetre a year, and the oldest tree that we have, and we think it's in the southern hemisphere, it's 3,500 years old. They counted the rings on it, and the rings are very tight if you see the grain of the wood. The only other older tree is one in California, a bristlecone pine I think it is. But yeah, it was a fascinating day on that trip, highly recommend it. There's 2 boats there, the Gordon River cruises and the Heritage cruise. I chose the Heritage cruise because they had a better option. A little bit more expensive, but it was certainly worth it. After Strawn, we travelled up to Stanley via a place called Corinna. We had to cross the Pyman River, and the only way you can do that is on a barge. And the barge is, the name of the barge is the Fat Man Barge. They most probably named it after me. But interesting way to go across. Haven't been on a barge or ferry for years. And $25 gets a car across. I think it's $12 for a bike. Road was a dirt road in, but it was easy as any adventure bike would be able to get on it. And yeah, after that we went up to Stanley. Last night was at Stanley, and we decided to take a chairlift ride up to the Nut. It's a wildlife refuge up there. We did meet one of the locals up there, an echidna, and a few potoroos as well. After Stanley, and you get some great views from up there, but after Stanley we made our way towards Devonport, and we went to another one of those lookouts, and check out the colour of this water. It's absolutely amazing. So Tasmania was an amazing place. I know this video has gone for a long time, but if you ever get a chance to do it, do it, and take your time. We had 10 days down here, and it was awesome.